The call came at 7:43 a.m. on a Tuesday, just as I was reviewing quarterly reports for my consulting firm. Dad's voice carried that forced cheerfulness that always meant bad news was coming. "Marcus's son, we've got some exciting news to share with you." He paused, and I could hear Mom coaching him in the background. "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you." The family business that had been our livelihood for 3 generations, the store that put me through business school at Northwestern, the same store I'd been quietly saving from bankruptcy for the past 5 years. That's great, Dad. Really great. I managed to keep my voice steady. "Derek's been working there since high school. He deserves it. We knew you'd understand, Marcus. You've got your own successful thing going with that consulting business. Derek needs this more than you do. He's got Sarah and the kids to think about now, right? Derek, who'd barely graduated high school. Derek, who'd been fired from 3 different jobs before Dad finally gave him a permanent position at the store. Derek, who had no idea that his inheritance was actually being propped up by his older brother's money. The lawyers are drawing up the papers this week," Mom chimed in, having grabbed the phone. "Everything will be transferred to Derek by month's end. Isn't that wonderful? Keeping it in the family?" After I hung up, I sat in the silence of my office for a long moment. 23 years I'd been the responsible son, the one who went to college, built a career, never asked for handouts. And for the past 5 years, I'd been the one secretly keeping their precious family business alive. My assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Thompson, your 9 a.m. is here. Give me 5 minutes, Rachel." I pulled up a file on my computer labeled T&S Capital Investments, my private equity firm that nobody in my family knew existed. The firm that owned 49% of Thompson & Sons Hardware. The firm that had been quietly injecting capital, modernizing inventory systems, and negotiating better supplier contracts. My phone buzzed with a text from my business partner and best friend since college. "Andre Williams, saw the business transfer news on your family's Facebook. Your brother's already posting about being the new CEO. You good?" I typed back. Time for phase 2. Andre knew the whole story. He'd been there when I'd discovered Dad's mounting debts 5 years ago. He'd helped me structure the silent partnership deal. And he'd been warning me this day would come. My phone rang again. Derek this time. "Mark, did Dad tell you the news?" His voice was practically vibrating with excitement. "I'm officially taking over the business. Can you believe it? Congratulations, Derek." "That's huge. I've got so many plans, man. This first thing I'm doing is expanding the tool section. Maybe add some high-end power tools. Really modernize the place, you know?" I almost laughed. The modernization he was talking about had already happened, funded by me through a series of strategic improvements that Dad thought were just good luck and smart vendor negotiations. That sounds ambitious. You sure the finances can support that kind of expansion? "Oh man, Dad says the business is doing better than ever. Profits are up, debt's way down. Perfect timing for me to take the reins and really grow this thing." Perfect timing indeed. I'd spent 5 years cleaning up their mess, and now Derek was about to inherit the credit for all of it. "Listen, Derek, there's something I should probably tell you about the business finances. Hold that thought, bro. Sarah's calling me. We're going to celebrate tonight at Morton's. You should come." He hung up before I could finish. I stared at my phone, then at the stack of documents on my desk. Loan agreements, partnership papers, financial statements. 5 years of keeping my family's legacy alive, while they planned to hand it over to someone who thought running a business meant buying expensive tools. Andre appeared in my doorway. "So, what's the play?" I looked at him, then at the city skyline beyond my windows. Somewhere across town, Derek was probably already measuring the store for his new CEO nameplate. Dad was probably telling anyone who'd listen about how proud he was to pass the torch to his younger son. And Mom was probably planning some big announcement in the local paper. None of them had any idea what was coming. "We're going to let them have their moment," I said finally. 1 week. Let Derek start making his grand plans. Let them announce it to everyone. Let him feel like the king of his new castle. And then opened my laptop and began typing an email to my lawyer. And then we're going to have a very interesting family meeting about the true ownership structure of Thompson and Sons Hardware. The celebration dinner at Morton's was exactly what I expected. Derek held court at the head of the table, sketching his expansion plans on napkins while Dad beamed with pride. Mom kept taking photos for the family album. Sarah hung on Derek's every word like he'd just been handed the keys to Microsoft. "I'm thinking we convert the back storage area into a contractor's lounge," Derek explained, his third scotch making him more animated. "Coffee bar, comfortable seating, maybe even Wi-Fi. Really make Thompson & Sons a destination, not just a hardware store." I nodded politely, doing mental calculations. The storage area conversion alone would cost $40,000, money that Derek assumed would just magically appear. "That's a great idea," I said. "Have you looked at the budget for something like that?" Dad waved dismissively. "Marcus, always thinking about numbers. Derek's got vision. Sometimes you have to spend money to make money. If only he knew how much money I'd already spent." Over the next few days, I watched from a distance as Derek dove headfirst into his new role. He posted constantly on social media about taking the family legacy to the next level. He scheduled meetings with contractors about the renovation. He even had new business cards printed, Derek Thompson, CEO. What he didn't do was look at the actual financial records. Andre stopped by my office Friday afternoon with updates from his reconnaissance mission. He'd visited the store as a regular customer to see how things were going. "Your brother's already talking to suppliers about expanding inventory," Andre reported. "Expensive stuff, commercial-grade equipment, high-end brands." He told the Milwaukee tool rep that money was no object for the right partnership deal. I rubbed my temples. Of course he did. Gets better. He's also been talking to the employees about raises and bonuses. Apparently, he promised everyone a profit-sharing celebration once his improvements start showing results. My computer chimed with an email notification. Speaking of employees, it was from Janet Morrison, the store's longtime bookkeeper. Janet was one of the few people who knew about my financial involvement, though she didn't know the full extent. "Marcus," her email read, "Derek's been asking me for access to all the financial records. He wants to understand the complete picture before implementing his changes. Should I show him everything, including the partnership agreements? I don't want to overstep, but he is technically the new owner. Please advise." I stared at the email for a long moment. This was it. The moment Derek would discover that his inheritance came with some very significant strings attached. I called Janet directly. "Hi, Mr. Thompson," she answered on the first ring. Wasn't sure what to do about Derek's request. "Show him everything, Janet. All of it. The loan documents, the partnership papers, the capital injection records. Everything." "You sure? I mean, he doesn't know about your involvement, does he?" "Not yet, but he's about to." I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. "He's not going to take this well?" "Probably not. But he needs to understand what he's actually inherited before he makes any more promises he can't keep." After I hung up, I sat back in my chair and waited. It wouldn't take long. Derek might not be great with business strategy, but he could read a balance sheet when the numbers were staring him in the face. My phone started ringing at 2:17 p.m. "Marcus, what the hell is this?" Derek's voice was tight with confusion and anger. "Janet just showed me some paperwork that says you own half the business." "That can't be right." 49%, I corrected. "And yes, it's right." Silence. "Then what do you mean 49%? Dad gave me the business, the whole business." "Dad gave you 51% of the business, Derek, the controlling interest. I've owned the other 49% for 5 years. That's impossible." "Why wouldn't anyone tell me?" "Why wouldn't Dad? Because Dad doesn't know." Another long silence. When Derek spoke again, his voice was barely controlled. "What do you mean Dad doesn't know?" I looked out my office window at the afternoon traffic below. Somewhere in that maze of cars and buses, people were going about their normal lives, unaware that a family was about to implode over secrets and hidden partnerships. "Derek, 5 years ago, Thompson & Sons was 3 months away from bankruptcy. Dad had made some bad investments, taken out loans he couldn't service, expanded inventory without understanding cash flow. The business you just inherited, it was dying. You're lying. I can forward you the original financial statements if you'd like. Debt-to-equity ratio of 3 to 1. Negative cash flow for 18 straight months. Suppliers threatening to cut off credit. Dad was too proud to ask for help and too scared to tell Mom how bad things really were. I could hear Derek breathing heavily on the other end of the line. So I helped. I continued, quietly. I created a private equity firm, T&S Capital Investments. We bought into the business as a silent partner, injected capital, restructured debt, modernized operations. Every lucky break and good negotiation Dad thinks he made over the past 5 years, that was me working behind the scenes. Why? Derek's voice cracked. Why would you do that without telling us? That was the question I'd been asking myself for 5 years, because I love this family, because that business represents 3 generations of our legacy, and because Dad would have rather lost everything than accept help from his successful son. My office door opened and Andre walked in, took one look at my face and mouthed, "Derek?" I nodded. "I need to see the paperwork, Derek," said finally. "All of it. Janet has copies of everything. But Derek, there's something else you need to know." "What now?" "The partnership agreement includes approval rights for major expenditures over $25,000. Those expansion plans you've been making, the contractor lounge, the inventory upgrades, the employee bonuses, you need my signature for all of it." The line went dead. Andre sat down across from my desk. "How'd he take it?" "About as well as you'd expect." My phone immediately started buzzing with text messages. Derek, then Dad, then Mom, all wanting answers to questions they'd never thought to ask. I turned the phone face down and looked at Andre. "You know what the crazy part is? I thought this would feel better. I thought finally telling the truth would be liberating. And instead I just feel like I've started a war." The emergency family meeting was called for Sunday dinner at my parents' house on Maple Street. Mom's text was brief but loaded with tension. "We need to discuss this business situation. 5 p.m. Don't be late." I spent Saturday preparing with Andre and my lawyer, Patricia Chen, who'd handled the original partnership agreements. We met at my office to review every document, every clause, every possible angle Derek and my parents might use to challenge. The arrangement, the partnership is ironclad, Patricia assured me, spreading papers across the conference table. You provided capital, expertise, and ongoing financial support in exchange for equity. Derek can't just wish away your ownership stake. But he could make my life hell as the majority owner, I pointed out. Freeze me out of decisions, refuse to communicate, maybe even try to buy me out at a reduced valuation. Andre leaned back in his chair, or he could do something really stupid and try to run the business into the ground out of spite. That possibility had been keeping me awake at night. Derek had a temper, and when he felt cornered, he tended to lash out without thinking about consequences. Patricia opened another file. "That's why I prepared these." She handed me a stack of documents. Updated partnership agreement with enhanced protective clauses. Mandatory quarterly financial reviews. Dispute resolution procedures. Most importantly, a succession plan that protects both the business and your investment. I scanned the papers. What's the catch? Derek has to agree to sign them. If he refuses, you're stuck with the original agreement, which gives you less operational oversight. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. "Talk to a lawyer. See about your little partnership on Sunday." I showed the message to Andre, who grimaced. "He's getting legal advice. This is about to get complicated." "It was always going to get complicated," I replied. "The question is whether we can keep it from destroying the family." Patricia packed up her files. "Marcus, I have to ask, what's your end game here? Do you want to maintain the partnership, buy Derek out completely, or sell your stake and walk away?" I'd been wrestling with that question for weeks. Smart business move would be to force a buyout at fair market value. Take my money and let Derek sink or swim on his own. But Thompson & Sons wasn't just a business to me. It was 3 generations of family history, the foundation of my parents' retirement. And despite everything, still my brother's best chance at building something meaningful. "I want to save the business," I said finally, with or without Derek's cooperation. Sunday arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood as I drove through the familiar streets of my childhood neighborhood. My parents' house looked smaller than I remembered. the hardware store's success over the past 5 years having enabled them to pay off the mortgage and make some improvements. Improvements funded, indirectly, by my silent partnership. Derek's truck was already in the driveway, along with an unfamiliar sedan I assumed belonged to his lawyer. Through the front window, I could see figures moving around the dining room. Papers spread across Mom's good tablecloth. Andre had offered to come for moral support, but I'd declined. This was family business, messy and personal in ways that even the closest friendships couldn't navigate. I knocked before entering. A courtesy I'd never needed before, but which seemed appropriate given the circumstances. Marcus. Dad's voice was controlled, but cold. Come in. We need to talk. The dining room had been converted into a war room. Derek sat at one end of the table with a man in an expensive suit, clearly his attorney. Mom hovered nervously by the kitchen door, while Dad took his position at the head of the table like a judge preparing to render a verdict. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. This is Jim Crawford, Derek said, gesturing to his lawyer. He's reviewed the documents Janet showed me. He has some questions about the legitimacy of your so-called partnership. I took the seat across from them, setting my own folder of papers on the table. I'm sure he does. Would you like to know? Crawford leaned forward, his demeanor professional, but aggressive, Mr. Thompson. My client was unaware of any partnership agreement when he accepted ownership of the business from your parents. This suggests either fraud or misrepresentation on someone's part. The partnership was legally established 5 years ago, I replied calmly. All documents were properly filed with the state. The fact that Derek wasn't informed doesn't invalidate the agreement, but it does raise questions about your parents. Authority to transfer 100% ownership of a business they only owned 51% of. I looked at Dad, whose face had gone pale. Dad, did you not read the partnership documents? When you signed them, Dad's voice faltered. There were so many papers, and you said it was just a loan arrangement. It was a loan arrangement, initially. But when it became clear that traditional lending wouldn't be sufficient to save the business, we restructured it as an equity partnership. You signed off on every change. Mom spoke up from the doorway, her voice shaky. Marcus, why didn't you tell us? Why all the secrecy? This was the moment I'd been dreading. Not the legal complications or Derek's anger, but having to explain to my parents why their successful son had felt the need to lie to them for 5 years. Because, Mom, every time I tried to offer help directly, you and Dad rejected it, remember? When I offered to co-sign a loan to modernize the point-of-sale system, Dad said he didn't want charity from his son. When I suggested hiring a business consultant, you told me I was being condescending. When I offered to invest directly, Dad said the family business should stay in the family. So you went behind our backs, Derek accused. No, Derek. I found a way to help that preserved Dad's dignity and kept the family business alive. Would you have preferred I let it fail? Crawford shuffled his papers. Mr. Thompson, regardless of your motivations, my client has concerns about the operational implications of this partnership. You essentially have veto power over any significant business decision. Only expenditures over $25,000, I clarified. Day-to-day operations remain under Derek's control. $25,000? Derek's voice cracked. Do you have any idea how limiting that is? I can't even renovate a bathroom without your permission. Can't renovate a bathroom without proper budgeting and cash flow analysis, I corrected. Which, frankly, you should be doing anyway. Dad slammed his hand on the table. Enough. This is exactly what I was afraid of. My sons are at each other's throats over money and control. The room fell silent. Mom stepped closer to the table, her eyes red with unshed tears. Your father's right, she said quietly. This isn't what we wanted. When we decided to give Derek the business, it was supposed to bring the family together, not tear it apart. I looked around the table at my family, my brother red-faced with anger, my father gray with stress, my mother heartbroken by the conflict. The successful business partnership I'd worked so hard to protect was destroying the very relationships it was meant to preserve. Then let's fix it, I said, opening my folder. I had my lawyer draw up a revised partnership agreement, one that protects everyone's interests while giving Derek the operational freedom he needs. Crawford frowned. We haven't agreed to any revisions. No, I agreed, but Derek hasn't heard what I'm proposing yet. I spread the new documents across the table, my hands steady despite the weight of what I was about to offer.
Here's the deal.
I'll restructure my partnership stake from 49% equity to a 25% stake plus a secured loan for the remainder of my investment. Derek gets full operational control. I get reasonable oversight on major expenditures and a guaranteed return on my investment. If Derek wants to buy me out completely within 5 years, I'll accept fair market value. If not, we continue as partners with clearly defined roles and responsibilities. Derek stared at the papers, and if I refuse, I met his eyes directly. Then we continue under the original agreement, where I maintain 49% ownership and approval rights on all major decisions. Your choice. Crawford whispered something in Derek's ear, then spoke aloud. We'll need time to review these terms, of course. Take all the time you need. I stood up, gathering my copies of the documents. But Derek, understand something. I didn't spend 5 years saving this business, just to watch it fail now. One way or another, Thompson & Sons is going to succeed. The only question is whether we do it as partners or as adversaries. As I walked to the door, Mom caught my arm. Marcus, is there any way to go back? To undo all of this? I looked at her, tired face, at the dining room where my brother was huddled with his lawyer, at my father who couldn't meet my eyes. No, Mom. We can only go forward from here. Derek's answer came Tuesday morning via a conference call that his lawyer had insisted on recording. I sat in my office with Patricia on speaker while Derek, Crawford, and my parents participated from the store's back office. We've reviewed your proposal, Crawford began, his tone suggesting the review hadn't gone well. My client has several concerns about the restructured partnership terms. I'm listening, I said, though I suspected where this was heading. Derek's voice came through the speaker, tight with barely controlled anger. Marcus, I've been thinking about this all weekend. You say you were helping, but from where I sit, it looks like you were planning a takeover. A takeover. 5 years of secretly buying into the business, positioning yourself as the silent power behind the throne. And now, conveniently, just as I inherit the company, you reveal yourself as the puppet master. It's pretty convenient timing, don't you think? Patricia raised an eyebrow and mouthed puppet master, with obvious disdain. Derek, I said carefully, I've shown you the documentation. The partnership was established when the business was failing, not when it was succeeding. According to the documents you prepared, Crawford interjected, we've done our own research into the company's financial position 5 years ago. While there were certainly challenges, the business was hardly on the verge of bankruptcy. I felt my jaw clench. What research? Bank records, tax filings, supplier payment histories. The picture isn't as dire as you've painted. Patricia leaned toward the speaker. Mr. Crawford, this is Patricia Chen, Mr. Thompson's attorney. Curious about your methodology for this financial analysis. Did you factor in the outstanding loan obligations that weren't reflected in the tax filings? The supplier credit extensions that were about to expire? The equipment lease defaults that were accumulating? Silence on the other end. Then Crawford's voice, slightly less confident. We focused on the primary financial statements. In other words, Patricia continued, looked at the surface numbers without understanding the underlying cash flow crisis. Mr. Thompson's intervention prevented a cascade failure that would have destroyed the business within 6 months. That's your interpretation, Derek shot back. Maybe Dad would have found another solution. Maybe we didn't need Marcus riding in like some white knight. The hurt in his voice was unmistakable, and suddenly I understood what this was really about. This wasn't just about money or control. It was about Derek feeling diminished, like his inheritance came with an asterisk. Derek, I said gently, this was never about rescuing you or Dad. It was about preserving something that matters to all of us. No, Marcus. It was about you not trusting me to handle things. You saw Dad struggling and assumed I couldn't step up. You've always thought you were smarter, more capable, more deserving. That's not true, isn't it? You went to Northwestern, built your own business, became the success story. And meanwhile, I'm just the screw-up little brother who had to be given a job by Daddy. The raw pain in his words hit me harder than any legal argument could have. I thought about all the times I'd corrected Derek's ideas at family dinners. All. The subtle ways I'd undermined his confidence while thinking I was being helpful. Derek, I never thought. Yes, you did. And you know what the worst part is? You were probably right. I probably couldn't have saved the business. Probably would. Have screwed it up somehow, but he didn't even give me the chance to try. Dad's voice came through the speaker, heavy with exhaustion. Boys, this isn't solving anything. Actually, Dad, I think Derek's right about something, I said, standing up and walking to my office window. I did make assumptions. Assumed you wouldn't want my help? I assumed Derek wasn't ready for the responsibility. I assumed I knew what was best for everyone. Damn right you did, Derek muttered. But Derek, you're making assumptions too. You're assuming my involvement was about control rather than preservation. You're assuming I wanted to diminish you rather than support the family legacy. Crawford cleared his throat. Gentlemen, perhaps we could focus on the practical matters at hand. Mr. Derek Thompson needs to make a decision about the revised partnership terms. Actually, Derek said, his voice suddenly different. I've already decided. I'm rejecting Marcus's proposal. My stomach dropped. I'm not going to spend the next 5 years looking over my shoulder, wondering if my business partner approves of every decision I make. If you want to maintain your ownership stake under the original agreement, fine. But I'm running this business my way. Patricia frantically scribbled a note and held it up. This is a mistake. Original agreement gives you more control. Not less, Derek, I said carefully. I think you should understand what that means before you make this decision final. I understand perfectly. You own 49%. I own 51%. I make the decisions. No, Derek, you have the controlling interest. But under the original partnership agreement, major decisions require unanimous consent from all partners. That means I have effective veto power over virtually everything. Silence. Then Crawford's voice, much less confident. I'm sorry, what? Patricia opened the original partnership documents. Page 7, Section 4.3. All capital expenditures, operational changes. Personnel decisions affecting management positions and strategic initiatives require unanimous approval from all equity partners. It's an anti-dilution clause designed to protect minority investors. You didn't tell us this, Crawford accused. You didn't ask, Patricia replied coolly.
You assumed that controlling interest meant unilateral authority. It doesn't.
Derek's voice was barely controlled. So what are you saying, Marcus? That you can block everything I try to do? I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of the moment. I'm saying that the partnership I'm offering you gives you more freedom, not less. Under the original agreement, you can't hire a new employee, change suppliers, adjust store hours, or buy a new cash register without my approval. You're bluffing. Patricia, please read Section 4.3 aloud. She did, her clear voice filling the silence as the full implications became apparent. When she finished, Derek exploded. This is insane. You're telling me I inherited a business I can't actually run? You can run it, I said quietly. You just can't change it without partnership approval, which is exactly why I'm offering you a better deal. Crawford's voice was strained. We need to caucus privately. Of course, take all the time you need. After the call ended, Patricia shook her head. They walked right into that. Crawford should have read the partnership agreement more carefully. Before advising his client, I don't feel good about this, I admitted. Derek's right. I did manipulate the situation. Marcus, you saved the business and protected your investment. That's not manipulation, that's good business. But as I looked out at the Chicago skyline, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd won a battle at the cost of losing my brother. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. You win. When do you want to meet? I stared at the message, realizing that winning had never felt so much like losing. The second family meeting took place at Thompson & Sons Hardware. After hours on a Thursday evening, Derek had insisted on the location. If we're going to carve up the business, we should at least do it where Grandpa started it. The store felt different in the dim light after closing. 3 generations of family history lined the shelves. The original wooden displays Grandpa Thompson had built by hand, the expansion into plumbing supplies Dad had championed in the 80s, and the modern inventory management system I'd quietly funded 2 years ago. Derek sat behind the main counter. The revised partnership agreement spread in front of him like evidence in a trial. Dad occupied Grandpa's old chair near the register, while Mom nervously reorganized already perfect displays of screws and bolts. I took the stool by the paint counter, the same spot where I'd done homework after school 30 years ago. "All right," Derek said, his voice flat with resignation. "Let's get this over with." Crawford had advised against signing anything without further review. But Derek had fired him after learning about the unanimous consent clause, apparently. The lawyer's bill was going to be expensive enough without paying for his mistakes. "Derek," I started. "I want you to know that this doesn't change, don't." He held up a hand. "Don't tell me this doesn't change anything, because it changes everything. 3 days ago, I thought I was inheriting the family business. I find out I'm inheriting a junior partnership in a company my brother actually controls." Mom's voice was barely above a whisper. "Maybe we made a mistake. Maybe we should have told Derek about the partnership from the beginning." Dad shifted uncomfortably in Grandpa's chair. "We didn't know the full extent of it ourselves." Marcus made it sound like a simple loan arrangement. "Because that's what you needed it to be," I said, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. "Dad, 5 years ago when I tried to help directly, you told me that accepting money from your son would make you feel like a failure. So I found a way to help preserve your dignity." "By lying to us," Derek accused. "By giving you what you needed without forcing you to acknowledge it." Derek laughed bitterly. "How noble of you, the benevolent big brother, saving us all from ourselves." Patricia had insisted on keeping the meeting focused on practical matters, but the emotional undercurrents were impossible to ignore. This wasn't just about business partnership terms. It was about 30 years of family dynamics finally coming to a head. "Derek," Dad said slowly, "what Marcus did, it saved the business. Probably saved our house too. The debt service alone was killing us. So you keep telling me, but did anyone think to ask what I wanted? Did anyone consider that maybe I had ideas about how to fix things?" I leaned forward. "What ideas, Derek? What would you have done differently?" "I don't know," he exploded. "Never got the chance to figure it out. Every time I suggested something, you or Dad would explain why it wouldn't work. Every time I tried to take initiative, someone would swoop in and handle it better. And now I find out that for 5 years, my so-called success as store manager was just you pulling strings behind." The scenes, the hurt in his voice was devastating because it was largely accurate. I had undermined his confidence, not maliciously, but consistently. "You're right," I said quietly. "I did interfere. I did assume I knew better, and I'm sorry for that." Derek looked up sharply, clearly not expecting an apology. "But Derek, the business was dying. I couldn't stand by and watch 3 generations of family legacy disappear because of pride, yours, mine, or Dad's." Mom finally spoke up. "What happens? Now, do we sign these papers and pretend everything's fine?" I looked around the store, at the familiar shelves and displays, at my family's uncertain faces. "No, Mom. We don't pretend everything's fine. We acknowledge that it's complicated, and we figure out how to move forward." Derek picked up a pen, then set it down again. "Marcus, answer me honestly, if I sign this, are you going to be looking over my shoulder every day? Questioning every decision I make?" "No. The restructured agreement gives you operational control. I only have oversight on major expenditures, and only to protect the investment. Day-to-day management is yours. And if I want to expand the tool, section, or add that contractor lounge, if you can show me a business plan that demonstrates positive ROI, I'll approve it." Derek frowned. "A business plan? Derek, you're talking about $40,000 in renovations. Any bank would require a business plan for that kind of loan. I'm not being unreasonable. I don't know how to write a business plan." The admission hung in the air, heavy with embarrassment and frustration. Here was the real problem, not the partnership structure or the money, but Derek's fear that he wasn't qualified for the job he'd inherited. "Then we'll figure it out together," I said. "I'll help you learn the financial side. You teach me more about the day-to-day operations. We become actual partners instead of whatever we've been up to now. Dad cleared his throat. Marcus, Derek, I need to say something. He struggled to stand up from Grandpa's chair, his arthritis making movement difficult. Your grandfather started this business with a handshake and a promise to serve the community. Your mother and I tried to honor that, but somewhere along the way we lost sight of what really mattered. He looked directly at Derek. Son, I gave you the business because I thought you needed it more than Marcus. But I should have prepared you for it better. I should have taught you the financial side, involved you in the strategic decisions. Then he turned to me. And Marcus, I should have swallowed my pride and accepted your help openly. You're a successful businessman, and I was a fool not to learn from you. Mom wiped tears from her eyes. We just wanted to keep the family together. We still can, I said. But it means all of us have to change how we do things. Derek picked up the pen again, staring at the signature line. If I sign this, what guarantees do I have that you won't try to push me out later? Patricia, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. The agreement includes a buy-sell provision. If either party wants out, there's a clear valuation and purchase process. No one can be forced out, but there's an exit strategy if the partnership doesn't work. Derek nodded slowly, then looked around the store one more time. You know what the crazy thing is? Part of me is actually relieved. For 5 years, I've been wondering how Dad suddenly got so good at business. How he magically started getting better deals from suppliers. How our cash flow problems just disappeared. I kept thinking I was missing something obvious. You weren't missing anything, I assured him. You were managing the day-to-day operations better than Dad ever did. The customers love you, the employees respect you, and you know more about hardware than I ever will. But I don't know business yet. You don't know business yet? But you can learn. Derek looked at Dad, then at Mom, then finally at me. All right, let's try this partnership thing, but Marcus, next time you want to save the family business, maybe just ask first. I laughed, despite the tension. Deal. He signed the papers with a flourish that reminded me of the confident younger brother I remembered from childhood. Maybe we could make this work after all. But as we were gathering up the documents, Derek's phone buzzed with a notification. His face went pale as he read the message. What is it? Mom asked. Derek showed us his phone. It was a Facebook post from Janet, the bookkeeper, announcing her resignation effective immediately. The post was public, and the comments were already filling up with speculation about what was happening at Thompson & Sons. She's not just quitting, Derek said grimly. She's posted our dirty laundry for the whole town to see. I grabbed my phone and pulled up Janet's post. Sure enough, she'd written a detailed explanation about the family drama affecting the business, complete with vague references to hidden partnerships and secret financial arrangements. Within minutes, my phone was buzzing with calls from suppliers, customers, and competitors, all wanting to know what was really happening at Thompson & Sons Hardware. Well, I said, looking at my family's worried faces, I guess our private family matter just went public. The damage from Janet's social media posts spread faster than we could contain it. By Friday morning, the local business newspaper had picked up the story. And by afternoon, 3 major suppliers had called requesting clarification of Thompson & Sons' ownership structure. Derek and I met at my office to coordinate our response. The partnership agreement barely 12 hours old and already being tested by crisis. Milwaukee Tool wants a meeting, Derek reported, slumping into the chair across from my desk. Their regional manager saw Janet's post, and now they're concerned about management stability. Before approving our new product line, I pulled up my laptop to show him the latest developments. It gets worse. The Small Business Association blog picked up the story. They're calling it a case study in family business dysfunction. Great, we're famous for all the wrong reasons, Andre knocked and entered carrying a stack of printed articles. Thought you'd want to see the full coverage? It's not as bad as it could be, but it's not good. I scanned the headlines. Hardware store family feud goes public. Secret partnership rocks local business. When family legacy meets modern finance. Look, Derek said, pointing to one article. This quote from Janet. The family had no idea what was really happening with their own business. There were secret accounts, hidden partnerships, and major decisions being made without transparency. She makes it sound like I was running some kind of shell game. Were you able to reach her? Andre asked. Derek shook his head. She's not answering. Calls or emails. Get this. She's apparently been talking to Crawford, my ex-lawyer. He's been feeding her information about the partnership details. I felt my jaw tighten. That's a breach of attorney-client privilege. Only if he was still my lawyer when he talked to her, Derek pointed out. I fired him Wednesday. He's technically free to share whatever he learned during his representation. Patricia joined us via video call from her car, dealing with her own crisis management. I've been fielding calls all morning from business reporters, wanting to comment on partnership structures and family businesses. This is becoming a much bigger story than just Thompson & Sons. What's our best move? I asked. Complete transparency, she replied, without hesitation. The speculation is worse than the truth. You need to get ahead of this with a unified message. Looked skeptical. You want us to tell everyone about the partnership? I want you to tell everyone about the partnership's success story, Patricia corrected. 5 years ago, family business was facing closure. Innovative financing solutions saves jobs, preserves legacy, creates model for other family enterprises. You frame this as a good news story, not a scandal. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. Channel 7 News just called. They want to interview us about the family business controversy. What should I tell them? I showed the message to Derek, who groaned. This is spiraling out of control. Actually, Andre said thoughtfully, maybe that's our opportunity. Instead of running from the media attention, what if we embraced it? How so? Think about it. How many family businesses struggle with exactly these issues? Succession planning, family dynamics, financial transparency. You guys have actually figured out a solution. Maybe there's a way to turn this crisis into something positive. Derek frowned. You want us to go on TV and talk about our family drama? I want you to go on TV and talk about your family solution, Andre corrected. Marcus, you're a successful business consultant. Derek, you're a lifelong hardware industry professional. Together, you've created a partnership model that saved a failing business and preserved family legacy. That's not scandal. That's success. Patricia nodded approvingly from the screen. Andre's right. The narrative you're dealing with right now is family deception and hidden agendas. But the real story is innovative partnership saves 3-generation business. Which story would you rather have people talking about? I looked at Derek, who was clearly wrestling with the idea of making our private struggles public. What do you think? I think, Derek said slowly, that Janet's already made our business public. The question is whether we let her control the narrative or we take control ourselves. 2 hours later, we were standing in the main aisle of Thompson & Sons Hardware, checking our appearance before the Channel 7 news crew finished setting up their equipment. Derek had insisted on doing the interview at the store, surrounded by the products and displays that represented 3 generations of family work. Remember, Patricia coached us via earpiece. This is about partnership success, not family conflict. Your 2 brothers, who found a way to preserve their grandfather's legacy while building for the future. The reporter, Michelle Santos, approached. With her microphone and cameraman, Mr. Thompson and Mr. Thompson, thank you for agreeing to share your story. I understand there's been some controversy about the ownership structure of your family business. Derek stepped forward, and I was proud to see his confidence. Michelle, there's been some misunderstanding about our partnership arrangement. What we'd like people to know is that 5 years ago, my brother Marcus helped save this business when it was facing serious financial challenges. And Marcus, Michelle turned to me, you did this secretly, without your family's knowledge. I did it carefully, I corrected. My father is a proud man who built this business from nothing. When it hit rough times, he needed a solution that preserved his dignity while addressing the financial realities. We structured a partnership that allowed him to maintain control while bringing in the capital and expertise needed to turn things around. Michelle nodded. But Derek, you inherited the business without knowing about this partnership. How did that make you feel? Derek smiled ruefully. Honestly, at first I was angry. I felt like I'd been deceived. But then I realized that Marcus had spent 5 years helping our family without asking for credit or recognition. How many brothers would do that? So you're saying this controversy is actually a success story? Look around. Derek gestured to the bustling store. 5 years ago, this place was 3 months from closing. We had 12 employees who were about to lose their jobs. Today, we have 18 employees. We're profitable, and we're planning expansion. That didn't happen by accident. Michelle turned back to me. Marcus, what would you say to other family businesses facing similar challenges? I'd say that pride and tradition are important, but they can't pay the bills, I replied. The best way to preserve a family legacy is to be creative about how you structure the business relationships. Partnership doesn't have to mean loss of control. It can mean shared strength. And what's next for Thompson & Sons? Derek and I exchanged glances. We're planning a significant expansion, Derek said. New product lines, improved customer service areas, maybe even a second location. The difference is, now we're planning it together with full transparency about our goals and resources. After the crew packed up, Derek and I sat on the loading dock behind the store, watching the sunset over the industrial district where Grandpa Thompson had first opened his doors in 1952. Think we pulled that off? Derek asked. I think we told the truth, I replied. Whether people like the truth or not isn't really up to us. My phone buzzed with a text from Andre. Just watched the interview online. Perfect message. Milwaukee Tool called. They want to move forward with the product line expansion. Derek's phone chimed with a message from Sarah. Saw you on TV. You looked so professional and confident. I'm proud of you. You know what's funny? Derek said. Scrolling through supportive messages from friends and customers. This whole crisis might have been the best thing that could have happened to us. How so? For 5 years, I've been managing a business without really understanding it. Now, for the first time, I actually know what I'm working with. The finances, the partnerships, the real challenges and opportunities. It feels like I can finally do the job properly. I smiled, thinking about the business plan templates I'd already started preparing for Derek's review. So you're okay with having a business partner who's also your older brother? Derek grinned. As long as that business partner remembers that, some of us actually know how to talk to customers and fix broken pipe fittings. Deal. As we walked back into the store, I noticed Janet's resignation letter still taped to the employee bulletin board. Derek saw me looking at it. Think we should take that down? Nah, I said. Leave it up. It's part of the story now. The story of how we almost let pride and secrets destroy everything Dad and Grandpa built. The story of how we figured out that family businesses work best when the family actually talks to each other. Derek laughed. That's going to take some getting used to. 6 months later, I stood in the newly expanded Thompson & Sons Hardware, watching Derek lead a tour for a delegation from the National Family Business Association. The transformation was remarkable, not just the physical improvements, but the confidence in Derek's voice as he explained our partnership model to other business owners. The key insight Derek was saying to the group was realizing that family loyalty and business transparency aren't opposites. They're actually the same thing. When we started being honest about our challenges and resources, we could finally build something sustainable. The tour group included family business owners from across the Midwest, all dealing with their own succession and partnership challenges. Word about our Thompson model had spread through business networks, leading to speaking opportunities, consulting requests, and more media coverage than either Derek or I had ever wanted. Andre joined me by the new contractor lounge, Derek's renovation project that had finally been approved after he'd presented a detailed business plan showing 18-month payback on investment. Hard to believe this is the same place where you guys had your nuclear family meltdown 6 months ago, Andre observed. Sometimes things have to fall apart before they can be built properly, replied, watching Derek field questions about financial transparency and family communication. My phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. 2 p.m. conference call, Phoenix. Family Hardware Partnership. Another family business wanting to discuss our consultation services for structuring multi-generational partnerships. The consulting practice had grown organically from the media attention. Derek and I now spent 1 day a week helping other families navigate the complex intersection of business relationships and family dynamics. It was satisfying work, though it often reminded us how lucky we'd been to find our way through the crisis. Intact. Marcus, Derek called from across the store. Can you explain the financing structure to Mr. Rodriguez? He's dealing with a similar situation with his restaurant chain. I walked over to join the conversation with Carlos Rodriguez, whose 3 sons were fighting over succession plans for their successful Latino restaurant business in Phoenix. The problem, Carlos explained, is that my oldest son thinks he deserves the business because he's been working there the longest. My middle son thinks he deserves it because he has a business degree. My youngest son thinks he deserves it because he's the most creative with menu development. Derek nodded sympathetically. Sounds familiar? What does your accountant say about the current valuation? That's part of the problem. We've never had a formal valuation done. The business has grown so organically over 20 years that nobody really knows what it's worth or how to divide it fairly. I pulled out my tablet and showed Carlos the assessment framework we'd developed for family business partnerships. This is where we start with complete financial transparency. You can't make good decisions about ownership structure until everyone understands exactly what they're dealing with. But my sons are going to fight about every number, Carlos protested. Of course they are, Derek said with a laugh. That's what families do, but they'll fight more if they're making up their own numbers based on assumptions and hurt feelings. Over the next hour, we walked Carlos through the process that had transformed Thompson and Sons from a family battleground into a functional partnership. The conversation reminded me how far Derek and I had come in learning to work together professionally while maintaining our relationship as brothers. After Carlos left with a folder full of resources and a plan for getting his family to the table, Derek and I reviewed the day's sales figures in the back office that had once been the scene of our most difficult confrontations. Good numbers, Derek reported. The contractor lounge is paying for itself ahead of schedule, and the new power tool section is exceeding projections by 15%. Any concerns? The usual stuff. Johnson's Hardware is still trying to undercut us on pricing, and we're having some supply chain issues with the specialty fasteners, but nothing we can't handle. I made notes on my tablet, still adjusting to the reality that Derek was genuinely capable of handling most operational challenges without my intervention. The partnership structure we'd fought so hard to establish was working exactly as intended. Derek had operational control. I provided strategic oversight, and major decisions were made collaboratively. Speaking of handling things, Derek continued, Sarah and I have been talking about the 5-year buyout option in our partnership agreement. I looked up sharply. You want out? No, actually the opposite. I want to extend the partnership indefinitely. This arrangement is working better than either of us expected. Why put an artificial deadline on it? I thought about the question while reviewing our financial reports. The business was thriving. Our working relationship had evolved into genuine respect and collaboration, and the consulting practice was providing additional revenue streams for both of us. What does Patricia think about modifying the agreement? Oh, she thinks we're crazy to mess with something that's working, but she'll draw up the paperwork if we both want it. My phone rang with a call from Mom. Marcus, honey, are you busy? At the store, and Derek said you were meeting with that family from Phoenix. How did it go? It went well, Mom. They're going to start the transparency process and hopefully avoid some of the mistakes we made. I'm so proud of both of you boys, she said, her voice warm with genuine emotion. Your father was just saying yesterday how much he enjoys watching you two work together. He never thought he'd see the day when his sons were teaching other families how to run businesses. After I hung up, Derek smiled. Mom being proud of us for working together? That's still weird, right? Everything about this situation is weird, I agreed. But good weird, yeah, good weird. We worked in comfortable silence for a while, reviewing inventory reports and planning for the upcoming holiday season. The easy collaboration that had once seemed impossible was now simply how we did business. Around 5 p.m., as Derek was locking up the front of the store, my phone buzzed with an email from a producer at a major business network. They wanted to do a documentary about family business partnerships featuring Thompson and Sons as a success story. Derek, I called out, want to be famous again? he groaned theatrically. What now? I showed him the email, and he read it with growing amusement. A documentary? About us? About what we built? Yeah? Derek considered this for a moment, then looked around the store that had caused so much conflict and ultimately brought us closer. Together, you know what? Why not? If our story can help other families avoid the mistakes we made, maybe it's worth telling. As we walked out into the evening air, I thought about the journey that had brought us to this point. A year ago, I'd been the secret partner, working behind the scenes to save a family business, while maintaining the fiction that I was just the successful older brother. Derek had been the reluctant heir, inheriting a responsibility he wasn't. Prepared for now, we were genuine partners, building something together that was stronger than what either of us could have created alone. Marcus, Derek said as we reached our cars, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. Do you ever regret not just letting the business fail 5 years ago? It would have been simpler." I thought about the question while looking back at the Thompson and Sons sign, lit by the streetlights in the gathering dusk. "No," I said finally. "Simple isn't always better. Besides, some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight is with your own family." Derek smiled, "Especially when the fight is with your own family." As I drove home through the familiar streets of my childhood neighborhood, I reflected on the unexpected turns that had brought Derek and me from bitter conflict to successful partnership. The business that had once threatened to tear our family apart had instead become the foundation for a stronger relationship built on honesty, mutual respect, and shared purpose. My phone buzzed with a text from Andre. Saw the documentary proposal. "You guys are going to be insufferable when you're actually famous." I laughed and texted back, "Too late. Derek's already asking about getting a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame." The truth was, the recognition felt good, but not because of ego or fame. It felt good because Derek and I had proven that family businesses could evolve, that partnerships could work across generations, and that sometimes the best way to honor tradition was to be brave enough to change it 6 months ago. I'd thought success meant saving the family business from Derek's inexperience. Now I understood that real success meant helping Derek become the kind of business owner who didn't need saving, and becoming the kind of brother who didn't need to be the savior. As I pulled into my driveway, my phone rang one last time. "Derek, double quotes, hey. I just wanted to say thanks. For all of it, the partnership, the transparency, the fighting, everything. Thank you to Derek for letting me be your partner instead of your silent benefactor. Think we're going to be okay?" I looked at my house, at the life I'd built through years of hard work and careful planning, and thought about the family business where my brother was learning to be a leader and I was learning to be a collaborator. "Yeah, Derek, I think we're going to be just fine." Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.